In the cold depths of space, where empires rise and fall like distant stars, there exists a truth that has echoed through 1,000 conquered worlds. Never underestimate the species that crawled out of darkness to touch the void. The Caliph Dominion learned this lesson too late. For 300 years, they had crushed rebellion after rebellion, silenced world after world, believing their superior technology and ruthless efficiency made them untouchable. They saw humans as nothing more than another primitive species to be cataloged, controlled, and ultimately discarded. But humans have been watching, learning, waiting. When the Dominion's war fleets descended upon Earth's colonies like hungry vultures, they expected easy prey. What they found instead was something that would shake the very foundations of their empire. Something that would force them to confront a terrifying reality. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy wasn't the one with the sharpest claws or the largest ships. It was the one that smiled back. This is the story of how an empire that controlled half the galaxy discovered why humans don't just survive extinction events, they weaponize them. This is the story of the day the Reaper removed his mask, and the universe learned to fear the sound of human laughter in the dark. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominator's Wrath, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he gazed out at the human colony world of New Harmony spinning slowly below. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, its blue-green surface dotted with white clouds, and the gentle glow of settlements scattered across 3 continents. It reminded him of a jewel, beautiful and fragile, ready to be plucked from its setting. Pathetic, he muttered, his voice carrying the distinctive clicking undertone of his species. 3 months of preparation to subjugate this backwater settlement. High Command grows soft if they think these primitives require such overwhelming force. His tactical officer, a younger Caliph named Zorthak, approached with measured steps. Admiral, the final fleet positions are confirmed. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and over 200 support vessels. The humans cannot possibly mount any meaningful resistance. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. Of course they cannot. Look at their defenses, Zorthak. A handful of outdated orbital platforms, and perhaps 50 small craft they generously call warships. Their largest vessel is smaller than our escort frigates. This will be over before the sun sets on their largest city. The bridge crew worked efficiently around them, monitoring communications and tracking the movement of human vessels in the system. The Caliph had perfected the art of conquest over 3 centuries, and this operation followed the same proven formula that had brought 100 worlds under Dominion control. Overwhelming force, swift action, and the complete destruction of any will to resist. It had never failed. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human planetary government, reported the communications officer. They are requesting terms for surrender. Kethvar's eyes, all 6 of them, focused on the main display where a middle-aged human appeared. The creature looked remarkably calm for someone facing the annihilation of his world. He wore simple civilian clothing and spoke with the kind of measured tone that suggested education and intelligence, though Kethvar knew that human intelligence was limited compared to Kala's superiority. This is Governor Marcus Chun of New Harmony, the human said. We know why you're here, and we know what your kind has done to other colonies. We're prepared to discuss terms of surrender to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Kethvar gestured for the channel to be opened. Human Governor, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Caliph Dominion. Your surrender is appreciated, though ultimately unnecessary. This system and all its contents now belong to the Dominion. You have 1 hour to order all vessels to stand down and prepare for occupation forces. Any resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your world. Governor Chun nodded slowly, as if he had expected exactly this response. I understand, Admiral. However, I should inform you that we've already contacted Earth and other human colonies about your arrival. They know what's happening here. The Caliph Admiral's mandibles clicked in genuine amusement. How unfortunate for them. They will discover soon enough that the fate of New Harmony awaits any human world that defies the Dominion. Your species' expansion ends here and now. Perhaps, Chin replied, and Kethvar noticed something strange in the human's eyes. They weren't filled with fear or desperation as he had expected. Instead, they held something that looked almost like anticipation. But before we proceed, Admiral, I have a question for you. Speak quickly, human. My patience grows thin. In all your years of conquest, have you ever encountered a species that actually welcomed war? That treated combat not as a terrible necessity, but as the highest form of art? Kethvar frowned, his brow ridges drawing together. What manner of question is this? All species fear destruction. It is the natural order. Governor Chun smiled then, and the expression sent an unexpected chill through the Admiral's exoskeleton. It was not the smile of a defeated man begging for mercy. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that others did not. Admiral, I want you to understand something about humans before you begin your attack, Chun continued. We didn't colonize New Harmony because it was safe or easy. We chose it specifically because it was dangerous. This planet has predators that would terrify your average sentient being. Creatures that hunt in packs and show no mercy. Weather patterns that can kill the unprepared in minutes. Geological instability that demands constant vigilance. Your point, human. My point is that we could have chosen an easier world. A safer world. But we didn't, because humans don't seek safety, Admiral. We seek challenge. We seek the opportunity to prove ourselves against impossible odds. Chin's smile widened. And you, Admiral Kethvar, have just provided us with the greatest challenge our species has faced in over a century. The communication ended, and the bridge fell silent. Kethvar stared at the blank screen for a long moment, trying to process what the human had said. It made no sense. No species welcomed destruction. No civilization celebrated the arrival of a superior force bent on their annihilation. Admiral Zorthak's voice broke the silence. Your orders? Kethvar shook off his confusion. The human was clearly deranged, driven mad by the prospect of his world's destruction. Such reactions were not uncommon among primitive species when faced with the inevitable. Begin the attack, he ordered. Target their orbital defenses first, then move on to population centers. Standard pacification protocol. I want this finished before the day cycle ends. The Caliph fleet moved with practiced precision, their formation spreading across the system like a net designed to catch any vessel attempting to escape. The human defenses activated as expected, their small ships moving to intercept the vastly superior Dominion forces. It was exactly what Kethvar had seen dozens of times before on dozens of other worlds. Except for one small detail that nagged at the back of his mind. The human ships weren't fleeing. Instead of attempting to escape or forming defensive positions around their world, the human vessels were accelerating directly toward the Caliph fleet. Their approach vectors were aggressive, almost reckless, showing none of the caution that characterized the tactics of species fighting for survival. Tactical analysis, Kethvar ordered. Admiral, the human vessels are approaching at maximum acceleration. They appear to be targeting our forward screening elements. Current course and speed suggest they intend to engage us in direct combat. Impossible. They cannot hope to defeat us in direct engagement. Their weapons are inferior, their ships are smaller, their numbers are insignificant. Kethvar studied the tactical display with growing confusion. What are they thinking? His question was answered moments later when the human fleet opened fire. The energy signatures that appeared on the Caliph sensors were all wrong. The weapons' yields were far higher than should have been possible from ships of that size. The targeting accuracy was beyond anything the Dominion intelligence services had attributed to human technology. And the tactics being employed were unlike anything in the Caliph military database. The human ships moved like a pack of predators that had been hunting together for years. They coordinated their attacks with a precision that suggested either advanced artificial intelligence or a level of training that bordered on the obsessive. They targeted weak points in Caliph ship designs that should have been unknown to human forces. They used the Dominion's own formation against them, forcing larger ships to fire through their own screening elements. "Admiral, we are taking casualties," reported the tactical officer, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. "The humans have destroyed 3 of our escort cruisers and damaged 2 more." Kethvar stared at the tactical display in shock. In 300 years of conquest, the Dominion had never lost ships in the opening moments of an engagement against a primitive species. Their technological superiority was supposed to make such losses impossible. "How many human vessels have we destroyed in return?" he demanded. "None, sir. They are employing some form of advanced maneuvering that allows them to avoid our targeting solutions while maintaining their own firing positions." The admiral felt something he had not experienced in decades of military service: uncertainty. The human fleet should have been swept away in the first minutes of combat. Instead, they were not only surviving, but actively damaging ships that represented the pinnacle of Caliph military engineering. "Bring the dreadnoughts to bear," he ordered. "Maximum firepower. I want those human vessels destroyed immediately." The massive Caliph dreadnoughts adjusted their positions, their primary weapons charging with enough energy to crack a moon's surface. Surely the humans would break and run when faced with such overwhelming firepower. No species could stand against the full might of a Dominion battle fleet. But as the dreadnoughts prepared to fire, something extraordinary happened. The human fleet split into smaller groups and accelerated even faster, their ships pushing their engines beyond what should have been safe operational limits. They scattered across the battlefield in a pattern that seemed random at first, until Kethvar realized they were positioning themselves to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the human fleet," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." A new voice filled the bridge, younger than Governor Chun, but carrying the same strange confidence. "Caliph Fleet, this is Captain Sarah Martinez of the New Harmony Defense Force. We want to thank you for this opportunity." Opportunity? Kethvar found himself asking despite his better judgment. "The opportunity to show the galaxy what humans do to those who threaten our homes," Martinez replied. "You wanted to see our surrender, Admiral. Instead, you're about to witness our specialty. We call it aggressive problem solving." The human attack that followed defied everything the Caliph understood about space combat. The human ships moved in coordinated patterns that allowed them to concentrate firepower on single targets while avoiding retaliation. They used their superior maneuverability to stay inside the turning radius of the larger Caliph vessels, striking again and again at critical systems. More importantly, they displayed a tactical understanding that suggested they had been studying Caliph fleet movements for far longer than should have been possible. Every weakness in Dominion ship design was exploited. Every gap in their formation was turned into an advantage. "Admiral, we have lost 6 escort cruisers and 2 heavy destroyers," the tactical officer reported. "Damage reports coming in from multiple dreadnoughts. The humans are targeting our engine systems and weapon arrays with surgical precision." Kethvar watched in growing horror as his supposedly invincible fleet was slowly torn apart by a force that represented a fraction of his firepower. The humans fought with a combination of technical skill and raw aggression that he had never encountered in 3 centuries of warfare. "Sir, the human vessels are regrouping for another attack run," Zorthak reported. "They appear to be targeting the flagship." The admiral looked out at the enemy fleet, these small human ships that danced between his massive vessels like predators playing with wounded prey. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethvar began to wonder if the Caliph Dominion had made a terrible mistake. As if summoned by his thoughts, Governor Chen's face appeared on the main screen once again. "Admiral," the human said, his calm demeanor unchanged despite the battle raging around his world. "I believe I owe you an explanation. You see, when we humans first learned that aggressive alien species existed in this galaxy, we made a collective decision. We decided that if war was inevitable, we would become very, very good at it." Chun gestured towards something off-screen, and The display shifted to show images of human military academies, training facilities, and research installations. For the past 50 years, every human colony has been preparing for this day. We studied every engagement between your forces and other species. We analyzed your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. We built our entire civilization around a single principle. Never again would humans be the victims of galactic predators. The images changed to show vast industrial complexes and shipyards, all hidden beneath the surface of seemingly peaceful human worlds. What you see attacking you today isn't our entire defense force, Admiral. It's just our local militia. The ships you're fighting were built in secret shipyards by people who spent their entire lives preparing for your arrival. The pilots flying them have trained since childhood for this specific engagement. Kethvar felt his exoskeleton grow cold. Impossible. Our intelligence reports showed no such preparations. Chin's smile returned, and this time it was accompanied by what could only be described as predatory satisfaction. Your intelligence saw exactly what we wanted it to see. Peaceful colonies, primitive technology, defensive postures. We've been playing the role of harmless, expansion-minded explorers while building the most sophisticated military machine this galaxy has ever seen. The governor leaned forward, his eyes focusing directly on the Admiral with an intensity that made the Caliph warrior instinctively step backward. You asked me earlier if we had ever encountered a species that welcomed war, Admiral. Let me answer that question properly. Humans don't welcome war because we enjoy destruction. We welcome it because we are extraordinarily good at it. We welcome it because for us, warfare isn't just about victory or survival. Chin paused, letting his words sink in before delivering his final statement. For humans, Admiral Kethvar, war is where we show the universe exactly why Earth's children don't ask for mercy. We take it. The transmission ended just as the human fleet began their second coordinated attack, and Admiral Kethvar realized that everything the Caliph Dominion believed about human capabilities had been a carefully constructed lie. As his flagship shuddered under the impact of human weapons, one thought echoed through his mind with terrifying clarity. The hunters had just become the hunted. The Dominator's wrath shook violently as another volley of human weapons found their mark, sending Admiral Kethvar stumbling against his command chair. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in an ominous red glow, while damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. In 30 minutes of combat, the Caliph Dominion had suffered more casualties than in their last 5 conquest campaigns combined. Engineering reports primary shield generators at 60% capacity. Zorthak announced, his voice tight with stress. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. The humans are targeting our reactor cooling systems with disturbing accuracy. Kethvar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his kind. How do they know our ship layouts so precisely? These targeting solutions suggest they have complete technical specifications for our vessels. Before anyone could answer, another series of impacts rocked the flagship. Through the main view screen, Kethvar watched as human fighters swarmed around his dreadnoughts like angry insects, their small size allowing them to exploit blind spots in the massive ship's defensive arrays. Each fighter moved with the precision of a surgical instrument, striking at specific components and withdrawing before return fire could find them. Admiral, incoming priority transmission from the Caliph homeworld, the communications officer reported. Not now, Kethvar snapped. I need all communications focused on coordinating our defense. Sir, it's from Supreme Admiral Vektar himself. Maximum priority encryption. Kethvar Sitated. Supreme Admiral Vektar commanded the entire Dominion military. He did not make casual calls to field commanders during routine operations. The Admiral gestured for the transmission to be routed to his private chamber. The holographic image of Supreme Admiral Vektar materialized before Kethvar, the older Caliph's expression grim despite the poor quality of the long-range transmission. Admiral Kethvar, report your status immediately. Supreme Admiral, we have encountered unexpected resistance at the human colony. The enemy appears to possess capabilities not reflected in our intelligence reports. I am confident we can adapt our tactics and complete the mission, but casualties will be higher than anticipated. Vectar's 6 eyes narrowed. Admiral, I am not calling about your current engagement. 20 minutes ago, every Caliph installation within 50 light-years of Earth suffered simultaneous attacks. Outposts that were supposed to be secret. Research facilities that don't appear on any public charts. Listening stations that have operated undetected for decades. The words hit Kethvar like a physical blow. That's impossible, Supreme Admiral. No species possesses the intelligence network necessary to locate and target such installations simultaneously. Impossible or not, it has happened. Worse yet, the attackers demonstrated intimate knowledge of our facility layouts, our security protocols, and our defensive weaknesses. They struck with surgical precision, destroying strategic assets while deliberately avoiding unnecessary casualties among our personnel. Kethvar felt his exoskeleton grow cold. The implications were staggering. If humans possessed the intelligence capability to locate and attack secret Dominion installations across such a vast area, then everything the Caliph believed about human technological and organizational capacity was wrong. How many installations were hit? He asked. 17 confirmed, with 3 more that have gone silent and are presumed destroyed. Admiral, these weren't random strikes. The humans targeted our intelligence-gathering capabilities, our forward supply bases, and our strategic communication relays. They've effectively blinded us across an entire sector of space. The Supreme Admiral leaned forward, his massive frame filling the holographic display. But that isn't the most disturbing part of this development. Each attack was preceded by a transmission. The same message, delivered in perfect Caliph military protocol. What message? A human voice, speaking our language with native fluency, announcing that the Caliph Dominion was about to learn the difference between conquering defenseless worlds and fighting an enemy that fights back. Kethvar's mind reeled. Humans speaking perfect Caliph? Coordinated strikes across multiple star systems? Intelligence networks that could penetrate the most secret Dominion installations? None of this matched the profile of the primitive species they had come to subjugate. Supreme Admiral, there must be some mistake. The humans lack faster-than-light communication capabilities. They cannot coordinate attacks across such distances. Admiral Kethvar, Vectar's voice carried a warning tone. I suggest you abandon your preconceptions about human capabilities immediately. Because according to our remaining intelligence assets, what you are facing at New Harmony is not the desperate last stand of a doomed colony. What do you mean? It's a field test. The humans are using your fleet to evaluate their new military technologies before deploying them on a larger scale. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar alone with the horrifying realization that he might not be commanding a conquest at all. He might be an unwilling participant in a human military exercise. The Admiral returned to the bridge to find the tactical situation deteriorating rapidly. 2 more Caliph cruisers had been destroyed while he spoke with Supreme Admiral Vectar, and the human fighters had begun targeting the flagship's communication arrays with methodical precision. Sir, the human fleet has divided into 3 groups, his tactical officer reported. One group continues to engage our screening elements, while the second appears to be moving to attack our supply ships. The third group has taken position between our fleet and the system's outer planets. They're trying to prevent our retreat, Zorthak observed. Kethvar studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human formation was not the desperate improvisation of an outmatched force. It was a carefully planned maneuver designed to trap and destroy a numerically superior enemy. The precision of their positioning suggested hours of advanced planning based on detailed knowledge of Caliph tactical doctrine. Admiral, incoming transmission from the human fleet commander, the communications officer announced. Captain Martinez's face appeared on the main screen, her expression calm despite the chaos of battle visible through her bridge windows behind her. Admiral Kethvar, this is your final opportunity to withdraw your forces from this system. "You cannot be serious," Kethvar replied. "Your fleet is outnumbered 10 to 1. Your weapons are inferior to ours. You cannot hope to achieve victory in conventional combat." Martinez smiled, and Kethvar was beginning to understand why human facial expressions had such an unsettling effect on other species. There was something predatory in that expression, something that suggested hidden knowledge and concealed strength. "Admiral, you keep talking about conventional combat, as if that's the only way humans fight. Let me explain something about my species that your intelligence services apparently missed." The display behind Martinez changed to show images of Earth's history. Battles fought in impossible conditions. Victories achieved against overwhelming odds. Technologies developed not for exploration or commerce, but for the specific purpose of killing enemies more efficiently. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. Not just wars of survival, but wars of choice. Wars fought for resources, for territory, for ideology, for sport. We are the only species in known space that developed weapons capable of sterilizing our own planet before we achieved interstellar flight. The images shifted to show human military academies, research facilities, and training grounds. When we reached the stars, Admiral, we didn't leave our warrior heritage behind. We refined it. We studied every conflict, every tactic, every innovation in the art of warfare. We built our entire interstellar civilization around a single principle. Which is what? Kethvar found himself asking despite his determination not to engage with the humans' psychological warfare. That if other species were going to threaten human colonies, we would ensure that threatening us became the last mistake they ever made. Martinez gestured toward something off-screen, and new contacts appeared on the Caliph tactical display. Ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Not just a few ships, but dozens. Then hundreds. "Admiral, what you've been fighting for the past hour is the New Harmony Planetary Defense Force. Civilian volunteers with day jobs and families. The ships now entering the system represent the actual human colonial defense fleet." Kethvar stared at the tactical display in horror as more and more human vessels materialized from hyperspace. Ships larger than any his intelligence services had attributed to human construction capabilities. Vessels whose energy signatures suggested weapon systems that rivaled Caliph military technology. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our intelligence reports showed no such fleet construction. No species can build a battle fleet of this size without our sensors detecting the industrial activity." Martinez's smile widened. "Admiral, do you know what humans call a species that builds their military factories in orbit where everyone can see them?" "What?" "Extinct." The human captain gestured again, and the tactical display zoomed out to show the entire star system. Hidden installations throughout the asteroid belt came online, revealing themselves as massive shipyards and manufacturing complexes. Weapon platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment powered up their energy systems. What had appeared to be a peaceful human colony revealed itself as a fortress system designed specifically to destroy any fleet foolish enough to attack it. "Every human colony looks peaceful from space, Admiral. That's very deliberate. We learned a long time ago that the best defense against aggressive aliens is to let them think we're helpless until it's too late for them to escape." Captain Martinez leaned back in her command chair with the casual confidence of someone who had already won. "The ships your fleet is fighting were built in hidden shipyards throughout this system. The pilots flying them have trained their entire lives for this engagement. The tactics we're using were developed specifically to counter Caliph military doctrine." "You've been planning this for years," Kethvar said, the words barely audible. "Try decades, Admiral. We've been preparing for war with the Caliph Dominion since before this colony was established. Every human world has been building ships, training crews, and developing weapons designed to fight your kind of warfare." The human captain's expression grew serious. "You see, Admiral, your species made one critical error in judgment about humans. You assumed that because we appeared peaceful, we were weak. Because our colonies looked defenseless, we couldn't fight back. Because we hadn't attacked anyone, we didn't know how. Martinez stood from her chair, moving closer to the camera with predatory grace. But humans don't start fights, Admiral. We finish them. And when we finish a fight, we make sure our enemies never threaten anyone again. The transmission ended just as the first wave of human reinforcements opened fire on the Caliph fleet. Energy weapons that matched anything in the Dominion arsenal began tearing through Caliph shields and armor. Missiles with guidance systems that could track and engage multiple targets simultaneously overwhelmed Caliph defensive systems. But it was the coordination that truly terrified Admiral Kethvar. Hundreds of human ships, moving as if controlled by a single mind. Attack patterns that shifted and adapted in real time based on Caliph responses. Tactics that suggested not just years of planning, but decades of preparation specifically for this engagement. Admiral, we are receiving surrender requests from multiple ships in our fleet, Zorthak reported, his voice hollow with shock. Surrender is not an option, Kethvar replied automatically. Dominion forces do not surrender to primitive species. Sir, we have lost over 40 vessels in the past 20 minutes. The humans are systematically destroying our ability to coordinate our defense. They're targeting our command ships while leaving our support vessels intact. Kethvar studied the tactical display with growing comprehension. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Caliph fleet entirely. They were dismantling it piece by piece, destroying its ability to function as a coherent military force while preserving as many lives as possible. It was the tactical approach of a species that understood warfare at a level the Caliph had never imagined possible. Admiral, incoming transmission from Governor Chun, the communications officer announced. The human governor appeared on the main screen, his calm demeanor unchanged despite the battle raging around his world. Admiral Kethvar, I believe it's time we discuss terms. I will not surrender to a primitive species, Kethvar declared. Admiral, respectfully, there are no primitive species in this battle. There is a technologically advanced military force that has been preparing for this engagement for decades, and there's a confused invasion fleet that based its strategy on 40-year-old intelligence reports. Governor Chun clasped his hands behind his back, mirroring Kethvar's earlier posture. But I'm not asking for your surrender, Admiral. I'm offering you the opportunity to withdraw your forces with minimal additional casualties. You would allow us to retreat? Admiral, humans don't gain anything from unnecessary destruction. We've made our point. You now understand that attacking human colonies is a strategic error that will be met with overwhelming retaliation. There's no need for further bloodshed. Chen leaned forward slightly, his expression growing more serious. However, I should inform you that this offer expires in exactly 10 minutes. After that time, Admiral, you'll discover what humans do to invaders who refuse reasonable terms. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kethvar alone with the most difficult decision of his military career. Around him, the bridge crew waited in silence as their admiral contemplated the unthinkable prospect of retreat in the face of a supposedly inferior enemy. Outside the ship's hull, human vessels continued their methodical destruction of Caliph military capability, each strike precisely calculated to minimize casualties while maximizing the psychological impact of inevitable defeat. For the first time in 300 years of Dominion expansion, a Caliph admiral found himself wondering if there were some species that were simply too dangerous to conquer. Time was running out, and Admiral Kethvar was beginning to suspect that humans had been counting on his pride to make the choice for him. Admiral Kethvar watched the countdown timer on his personal display reach the 5-minute mark. Around him, the bridge of the Dominator's wrath had grown silent, except for the constant stream of damage reports and casualty updates. The pride of the Caliph fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy they had assumed would surrender at the first sight of Dominion firepower. Admiral Zorthak approached carefully, his young face showing the strain of watching everything he had been taught about Caliph military superiority collapse in the space of a single engagement. Perhaps we should consider Governor Chen's offer. We could withdraw, report back to High Command, and return with a larger force. Kethvar's mandibles clicked slowly as he considered the suggestion. Retreat was not unknown in Caliph military doctrine, but it had never been employed against a supposedly primitive species. To withdraw now would mean admitting that humans represented a threat requiring serious military consideration rather than a simple pacification operation. And tell High Command what exactly? Kethvar asked. That a colonial militia defeated the largest Dominion battle fleet assembled in 50 years? That humans possess technology and tactical capabilities that our intelligence services completely failed to detect? Sir, the alternative appears to be the complete destruction of our force. Before Kethvar could respond, his tactical officer interrupted with an urgent report. Admiral, massive energy signature detected at the edge of the system. Single contact, approaching at maximum sublight velocity. Another human reinforcement? Unknown, sir. The energy pattern doesn't match any vessel type in our database. And, Admiral, it's massive. Easily 3 times the size of our largest dreadnought. Kethvar turned to study the long-range sensors, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The approaching vessel was indeed enormous, but its design was unlike anything he had encountered in 3 centuries of space travel. Where Caliph ships were angular and aggressive-looking, this vessel appeared almost organic in its flowing curves and seamless construction. Admiral, incoming transmission from the unknown contact, the communications officer reported. Put it through. The face that appeared on the main screen was human, but unlike Governor Chun or Captain Martinez, this individual wore a uniform that suggested military rank far above a colonial defense force. She appeared to be middle-aged, with short gray hair and the kind of calm expression that comes from decades of command experience. Admiral Kethvar, I am Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Force. I apologize for the delay in my arrival, but I needed to observe this engagement to determine whether diplomatic solutions remain possible. Fleet Admiral. Kethvar had never heard of humans possessing fleet-level military commands. According to Dominion intelligence, human colonies operated independently with minimal central coordination. I was not aware that humans possessed a centralized military command structure, he said carefully. Admiral, there are many things about human civilization that the Caliph Dominion is not aware of. That ignorance has led to the unfortunate situation we now face. Admiral Vasquez paused, her expression growing more serious. I understand that Governor Chen offered you terms for withdrawal. I'm here to present you with a broader perspective on your options. The display behind the human admiral changed to show a tactical overview of the entire sector of space surrounding New Harmony. Kethvar stared in shock as dozens of red icons appeared, representing human fleet movements that his sensors had completely failed to detect. Admiral, what you are seeing is the current deployment of Terran Defense Force assets within 50 light-years of your position. 12 full battle groups, representing over 800 vessels, have been moving into position for the past 6 hours. Impossible. Our long-range sensors would have detected such fleet movements. Admiral Vasquez smiled with the same predatory satisfaction that Kethvar had seen on other human faces. Admiral, your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. Human stealth technology has advanced considerably since your last intelligence update. The tactical display zoomed in on several of the fleet icons, revealing ship designs that defied everything Kethvar understood about human technological capabilities. Vessels that rivaled Caliph dreadnoughts in size, with energy signatures suggesting weapon systems that exceeded anything in the Dominion arsenal. But, Admiral, those fleets are not here to participate in this engagement. They're here to ensure that regardless of your decision regarding Governor Chen's offer, no Caliph vessels leave this system to report what they've learned about human capabilities. The words hit Kethvar like a physical blow. You're threatening to destroy my entire fleet regardless of whether we surrender? Not at all, Admiral. I'm explaining that you have 3 choices, not 2. You can accept Governor Chen's offer and withdraw your forces with minimal casualties. You can continue fighting and face complete destruction at the hands of the New Harmony Defense Force. Or you can attempt to flee the system and discover what the Terran Defense Force does to invaders who refuse all reasonable terms. Admiral Vasquez leaned forward, her expression growing deadly serious. But, Admiral, there is no fourth option where you leave this system and report back to your superiors about what you've learned here today. Kethvar felt something cold settle in his exoskeleton. You're saying that regardless of our choice, the Dominion will never learn about human military capabilities? The Dominion already knows about human military capabilities, Admiral. They've known for quite some time. The human Admiral gestured, and the display changed again to show intercepted Caliph communications, intelligence reports, and strategic analyses, all bearing the highest levels of Dominion security classification. Admiral, did you never wonder why High Command chose to send such overwhelming force against what they claimed was a defenseless human colony? Did you never question why your intelligence briefings were so detailed about human settlements, but so vague about human technology? Kethvar studied the documents appearing on his screen with growing horror. Intelligence reports that painted an entirely different picture of human capabilities. Strategic assessments that recommended extreme caution when dealing with human colonies. Military analyses that suggested human technology was far more advanced than publicly acknowledged. Your High Command has known the truth about humans for over a decade, Admiral. They've been studying us, preparing for inevitable conflict, and developing strategies to deal with what they correctly identified as the greatest military threat the Dominion has ever faced. Then, why did they send us here to face destruction? Admiral Vasquez's expression softened slightly, showing what might have been sympathy. Because, Admiral Kethvar, your fleet was never meant to conquer New Harmony. You were meant to test human defenses and provide High Command with detailed intelligence about our actual combat capabilities. The revelation struck Kethvar like a lightning bolt. We're expendable. They sent us here expecting us to be destroyed. Your High Command needed to know exactly how effective human military technology had become. They needed detailed sensor readings of our weapons, tactical analyses of our strategies, and comprehensive data about our defensive capabilities. The only way to obtain that information was to provoke a real engagement. The human admiral gestured toward the ongoing battle visible through the bridge windows. Every weapon fired, every maneuver executed, every tactical decision made during this engagement has been recorded by Dominion sensors. Your fleet's destruction will provide High Command with the intelligence they need to develop effective countermeasures. Kethvar felt his world collapsing around him. Not only had humans demonstrated military capabilities far beyond anything he had imagined possible, but his own government had sent him and his crews to their deaths for the purpose of gathering intelligence. Admiral, Zorthak's voice was barely audible. What are your orders? Before Kethvar could respond, Admiral Vasquez spoke again. Admiral, I want you to understand something important about humans before you make your final decision. We are aware of your High Command strategy. We know that you were sent here to gather intelligence at the cost of your lives. And we know that even if you choose to withdraw, that intelligence will be used to plan future attacks against human colonies. The display behind the human admiral changed once more, showing images of Earth and its major colonies. Peaceful worlds with billions of human inhabitants going about their daily lives, unaware that their civilization was preparing for the largest war in galactic history. But humans have a saying, Admiral, if you want peace, prepare for war. We've been preparing for war with the Caliph Dominion for 50 years. Not because we wanted conflict, but because we recognized that conflict was inevitable. Admiral Vasquez stood from her chair, moving closer to the camera with the fluid motion of someone comfortable with command authority. Your High Command believes they can use the intelligence from this engagement to develop strategies for conquering human space. They're correct about the value of that intelligence. They're incorrect about their ability to act on it. What do you mean? Admiral, while your fleet has been testing our defenses at New Harmony, human forces have been conducting similar intelligence-gathering operations throughout Calispace. The difference is that our operations were not conducted by sacrificial fleets expected to die for information. The tactical display expanded to show the broader galactic region, with human intelligence assets marked throughout Dominion territory. Deep penetration reconnaissance missions, long-term surveillance operations, and what appear to be sabotage teams positioned at critical Caliph installations. We know the location of every major Dominion military facility. We have detailed specifications for all Caliph ship classes. We possess complete intelligence on your supply lines, your industrial capacity, and your command structure. Most importantly, Admiral, we know exactly how your high command plans to use the information from this engagement. Kethvar stared at the display in shock. If the humans possessed intelligence capabilities of this scope, then the balance of power in the galaxy was not what the Dominion believed it to be. "You've been planning a war of your own," he said. "Admiral, humans don't plan wars. We plan to survive them." Admiral Vasquez's expression grew grim. "Your species has spent 3 centuries conquering peaceful civilizations and building an empire through the application of superior force. You've become accustomed to victory through overwhelming technological and numerical advantages." The human admiral paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "But you've never faced an enemy that studied your methods, prepared specifically to counter your advantages, and developed technologies designed to neutralize your strengths while exploiting your weaknesses. And that's what humans represent. Admiral Kethvar, humans represent something your species has never encountered before. Prey that evolve into predators while you weren't paying attention." The communication ended just as the countdown timer on Kethvar's display reached the 2-minute mark. Around him, the bridge crew waited in stunned silence as they processed the implications of what they had learned. The Caliph Dominion, the most powerful military force in known space, had been outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive colonists. Worse yet, they had walked into a trap that had been decades in the making, with their own high command treating them as expendable assets in a larger strategic game. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "Governor Chun is requesting our response to his terms." Kethvar looked out at the human fleet surrounding his vessels, ships crewed by beings who had spent their entire lives preparing for this day. Warriors who had turned the art of war into a science and applied that science with the precision of master craftsmen. For 300 years, the Caliph had been the hunters in this galaxy. But as Admiral Kethvar prepared to make his final decision, he realized that somewhere along the way, the roles had reversed. And the truly terrifying part was that humans had been patient enough to let their prey believe they were still in control right up until the moment they revealed their true nature. "Sir, Zortak prompted kuyuthi. Your orders?" Admiral Kethvar closed all 6 of his eyes and tried to imagine explaining to High Command how the most powerful battle fleet in Dominion history had been defeated by colonial militia forces. Then he tried to imagine what would happen when the humans decided that defensive victories were no longer sufficient for their long-term survival. Admiral Kethvar opened his eyes to find that the countdown timer on his personal display had reached 30 seconds. The bridge of the Dominator's wrath remained silent, except for the steady stream of damage reports that continued to flow in from throughout the fleet. In less than 2 hours of combat, the pride of the Caliph Dominion had been reduced to a broken collection of damaged vessels surrounded by an enemy that had systematically dismantled every assumption about human military capabilities. "Admiral," Zorthak's voice was barely above a whisper. 10 seconds remaining. Kethvar studied the tactical display one final time, looking at the human ships that surrounded his fleet with the patient efficiency of predators that had already won. The New Harmony Defense Force continued to maintain their positions, neither advancing for a killing blow nor withdrawing to safer distances. They simply waited, content to let their enemy make the choice between destruction and humiliation. "Open a channel to Governor Chun," Kethvar ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of 3 centuries of Dominion military tradition. Governor Chen's face appeared on the main screen, his expression unchanged despite the massive battle that had raged around his world. Admiral Kethvar, have you reached a decision? Governor Chun, I hereby order all Caliph vessels to stand down and prepare for immediate withdrawal from this system. A wise choice, Admiral. Your ships will be allowed to depart unmolested, with the understanding that any return to human space will be met with immediate and overwhelming retaliation. The word stung, but Kethvar forced himself to nod in acknowledgement. Understood. However, Governor, I must ask you a question before we depart. Of course, Admiral. Why? Why allow us to leave when you clearly possess the capability to destroy us completely? Your Admiral Vasquez made it clear that you cannot allow us to report what we've learned about human capabilities. Governor Chun smiled with that same predatory satisfaction that seemed to characterize human expressions of confidence. Admiral, you're operating under the assumption that preventing you from reporting what you've learned is still our primary concern. What do you mean? Admiral, this engagement was never about defending New Harmony from Caliph aggression. This engagement was about sending a very specific message to your high command about what happens to species that threaten human colonies. The display behind Governor Chun changed to show real-time tactical feeds from across Caliph space. Kethvar watched in horror as simultaneous attacks unfolded at dozens of Dominion installations. Military bases, research facilities, shipyards, and supply depots were being systematically destroyed by forces that moved with the same precise coordination he had witnessed at New Harmony. You see, Admiral, while you were testing our defenses here, human strike teams were eliminating your offensive capabilities throughout the sector. Every installation capable of supporting future attacks against human space has been neutralized. The feeds showed human ships emerging from hyperspace at perfect attack vectors, their targeting solutions already calculated before they arrived. Caliph defensive systems, which had never faced coordinated assault from technologically equivalent forces, proved inadequate against enemies who had studied their weaknesses for decades. This is impossible, Kethvar whispered. The logistics alone, coordinating attacks across such distances. Admiral, what you're witnessing is the result of 50 years of preparation. Every human colony has been building ships, training crews, and developing intelligence networks specifically for this operation. We call it the Sword of Damocles Protocol. Governor Chun leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. For decades, human leadership has known that conflict with the Caliph Dominion was inevitable. Your species' expansion patterns, your treatment of conquered populations, and your response to diplomatic overtures made peaceful coexistence impossible. The tactical feeds continued to show the methodical destruction of Caliph military infrastructure. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields for years revealed themselves to attack surprise Dominion forces. Weapons platforms disguised as commercial installations opened fire on passing patrol fleets. Supply convoys that had followed the same routes for decades found themselves ambushed by enemies who knew their schedules better than their own crews. So, we made a decision, Governor Chun continued. If war was inevitable, we would ensure that it began and ended on our terms, not yours. You planned this entire engagement, Kethvar said, the full scope of human strategic planning beginning to dawn on him. Admiral, we planned every aspect of this war before the first human colony was established in contested space. Your attack on New Harmony was not an unexpected aggression that forced us to improvise a defense. It was the final trigger for an operation that has been ready to execute for over a decade. The feeds showed the destruction of the last major Caliph military installation in the sector, leaving the Dominion's entire forward defensive network in ruins. The attacks have been so perfectly coordinated that Caliph forces never had the opportunity to mount an effective response. But, Admiral, the most important part of this operation isn't what you've seen here today. It's what happens next. What do you mean? Governor Chun gestured, and the tactical display zoomed out to show fleet movements throughout the local galactic region. Massive human formations were emerging from hidden bases and deploying toward the Caliph core systems. ships in numbers that exceeded everything the Dominion intelligence services had attributed to human industrial capacity. Admiral, your high command sent you here to gather intelligence about human defensive capabilities. They wanted to know how effectively we could resist Dominion aggression so they could plan strategies for overwhelming us. The human governor paused, allowing Kethvar to process the implications before continuing. What they're about to discover is that humans don't fight defensive wars, Admiral. We fight decisive ones. The display changed to show projected fleet movements and attack vectors that encompassed the entire Caliph Dominion. The scope of the planned operation was staggering, involving coordinated assaults on hundreds of star systems simultaneously. This cannot be possible, Kethvar said, his voice hollow with shock. No species possesses the industrial capacity to build fleets of this size without detection. Admiral, humans have been building this fleet for 50 years using industrial facilities that your intelligence services classified as commercial shipyards. We've been training these crews using exercises that your observers dismissed as civilian emergency drills. We've been developing these tactics using war games that your analysts assumed were recreational competitions. Governor Chun stood from his chair, moving closer to the camera with the fluid confidence of someone delivering a prepared statement. Your species made the same mistake that every galactic predator makes, Admiral. You assumed that because we looked peaceful, we were weak. Because our colonies appeared defenseless, we couldn't fight back. Because we hadn't attacked anyone, we didn't know how. The display behind Chun changed to show historical footage of human conflicts throughout their development as a spacefaring species. Wars fought with weapons that could sterilize planets. Battles conducted across multiple star systems. Strategic doctrines that treated entire civilizations as acceptable casualties in pursuit of victory. But humans have been fighting wars since before we developed agriculture, Admiral. We've been perfecting the art of violence since we first picked up rocks and discovered that some problems could be solved by hitting them very hard. The footage shifted to show human military academies, research facilities, and strategic planning centers. Institutions that had been studying Caliph military doctrine for decades, developing countermeasures for every Dominion tactical innovation. When we reached the stars, we didn't leave our warrior heritage behind. We industrialized it. We turned warfare from an art into a science, and we applied that science with the full resources of our civilization. Governor Chun returned to his seat, his expression growing more contemplative. Your high command believes that the intelligence from this engagement will help them develop strategies for conquering human space. They're correct about the value of that intelligence. They're incorrect about having the time to use it. What do you mean? Admiral, the attack fleets you're seeing on these displays are not moving to defensive positions. They're not preparing to repel future Dominion aggression. They're deploying for the complete conquest of the Caliph Dominion. The words hit Kethvar like a physical blow. You're planning to invade our core systems? Admiral, we're planning to end this conflict before your species has the opportunity to adapt to what you've learned about our capabilities. We're planning to ensure that no future human generation has to face the threat of Caliph aggression. The tactical display showed the final phase of the human operation. Strike fleets moving toward the Caliph homeworld itself. Forces sufficient to overwhelm any defense the Dominion could mount in the time remaining before their arrival. But, Admiral, the most important thing I want you to understand is that this outcome was entirely avoidable. At any point in the past 50 years, the Caliph Dominion could have chosen peaceful coexistence over aggressive expansion. You could have established trade relations instead of planning conquest. You could have respected our territorial boundaries instead of testing our defenses. Governor Chin's expression grew sad, showing what appeared to be genuine regret for the necessity of what was about to unfold. Humans would have preferred to remain peaceful colonists focused on building new lives among the stars. We would have been content to develop our worlds, advance our technology, and explore the galaxy without threatening anyone. Then why this? Kethvar gestured toward the displays showing the massive human military operation. Why build such overwhelming military force if you preferred peace? Because, Admiral, we learned a long time ago that the only way to ensure peace is to be too dangerous to attack. We learned that predators like the Caliph Dominion only understand one language. Governor Chun leaned forward one final time, his eyes focusing directly on Admiral Kethvar with an intensity that made the Caliph warrior instinctively step backward. The language of overwhelming, decisive, and permanent victory. The transmission ended just as human escort vessels moved into position around the Caliph fleet. Ships that would ensure safe passage to the edge of the system while preventing any attempt to transmit intelligence about what had been observed. Admiral Kethvar stood in the silence of his bridge, trying to comprehend how completely his understanding of the galactic balance of power had been overturned in a single engagement. The Caliph Dominion, which had controlled half the galaxy for 3 centuries, was about to discover that they had unknowingly been sharing space with a predator far more dangerous than themselves. Admiral, Zorthak's voice broke the silence. The human escorts are signaling for us to begin our departure. Kethvar nodded slowly, his mind still reeling from the revelations of the past few hours. Signal all ships to form up for immediate departure. Maximum speed to the hyperspace jump point. As the Dominator's wrath began its retreat from the new Harmony system, Admiral Kethvar found himself wondering if he would live long enough to see the Caliph homeworld again. Because based on the scope of the human operation he had witnessed, the war that was about to begin would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. For 300 years, the Caliph had believed they were the ultimate predators in space. They had built their empire on that assumption, conquered dozens of species based on that confidence, and planned their future expansion secure in that knowledge. But Admiral Kethvar now understood that the humans had been watching them the entire time, learning from their methods, studying their weaknesses, and preparing for the day when the roles of hunter and prey would be permanently reversed. The Reaper had finally removed his mask, and the face beneath it was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. 6 months after the engagement at New Harmony, former Admiral Kethvar stood in the ruins of what had once been the greatest military academy in Caliph space. The massive complex on the moon of Vecthera had trained Dominion officers for over 2 centuries, its halls echoing with the proud traditions of an empire that had once controlled half the known galaxy. Now those same halls lay open to the void, their walls shattered by weapons that had struck with surgical precision. Human forces had taken the facility without firing a single shot at the cadets or instructors within, instead focusing their assault on the structures themselves while providing advance warning for all personnel to evacuate. It was Kethvar had come to understand a very human approach to warfare, devastating in its effectiveness, yet showing an almost incomprehensible concern for the lives of their enemies. The transport will arrive in 10 minutes, announced the human liaison officer assigned to oversee the evacuation of remaining Caliph personnel. Lieutenant Sarah Kim was young by human standards, probably born after the secret preparation for this war had begun, yet she carried herself with a quiet confidence that seemed to characterize all human military personnel. Lieutenant, Kethvar said, using the human language that had become the official communication medium for all negotiations since the Dominion surrender 3 weeks earlier. May I ask you a question? Of course, sir. Did your people always plan for the war to end this quickly? Lieutenant Kim considered the question carefully before answering. Sir, human military doctrine has always emphasized decisive action. We studied every major Caliph engagement for 50 years. We knew exactly how long your species could maintain resistance once your industrial and command infrastructure was eliminated. Kethvar nodded slowly. The human analysis had been accurate to a terrifying degree. Once their coordinated strikes had destroyed the Dominion's ability to coordinate defense and resupply their fleets, organized resistance had collapsed in less than 4 months. The fabled Caliph military, which had conquered dozens of species over 3 centuries, had simply ceased to exist as an effective fighting force. But, sir, Lieutenant Kim continued, the speed of victory wasn't our primary concern. Our goal was to end the conflict with minimal casualties on both sides, while ensuring that the Caliph Dominion could never again threaten peaceful species. And you achieved both objectives. Yes, sir. Human forces suffered fewer than 12,000 casualties during the entire campaign. Caliph military casualties numbered fewer than 50,000. For a war involving billions of people across hundreds of star systems, those numbers represent unprecedented efficiency in conflict resolution. The young lieutenant paused, her expression growing more serious. Of course, the psychological casualties on your side are harder to quantify. Having your entire worldview overturned in the space of a few months takes time to process. Kethvar looked out through the shattered walls of the Academy at the human ships in orbit around Vecthera. Massive vessels that had appeared seemingly from nowhere to deliver terms for Caliph surrender. Ships whose crews had treated their defeated enemies with a combination of professional respect and genuine concern for their welfare that had left many Dominion officers struggling to understand their conquerors' motivations. Lieutenant, in all your species' preparation for this war, did you ever consider the possibility that you might be wrong about Caliph intentions? That perhaps diplomatic solutions could have prevented this conflict? Lieutenant Kim was quiet for a long moment before responding. Sir, human leadership spent decades attempting diplomatic contact with the Caliph Dominion. Every overture was either ignored or met with intelligence-gathering missions designed to identify weaknesses for future exploitation. She gestured toward a portable display unit, which showed archived communications and diplomatic records spanning 50 years of attempted human-Caliph interaction. We offer trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, mutual defense pacts, and even technological sharing arrangements. The Dominion response was always the same: increased military surveillance of human space and accelerated expansion toward our colonial boundaries. The display showed intelligence reports documenting Caliph fleet movements, strategic planning documents that treated human space as inevitable conquest targets, and military analyses that consistently recommended aggressive action against human colonies. Sir, we didn't choose war with the Caliph Dominion. We prepared for the war that your leadership had already decided to fight. Kethvar studied the documentation with the same growing comprehension that had characterized his understanding of human capabilities during the battle at New Harmony. The evidence was overwhelming and consistent. The Caliph High Command had indeed been planning the systematic conquest of human space for decades. We never understood, he said quietly, that you were aware of our intentions. Sir, humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We hoped that peaceful coexistence would prove possible. We prepared for the likelihood that it would not. Lieutenant Kim closed the display and turned to face Kethvar directly. But, sir, I want you to understand something important about the human approach to this conflict. We didn't fight this war because we enjoyed violence or because we wanted to build an empire of our own. Then why? Because we had children growing up on human colonies who deserved the chance to live their lives without the threat of alien invasion. Because we had scientists and artists and farmers and teachers who wanted to build something beautiful among the stars. Because we believed that the galaxy was big enough for multiple species to coexist peacefully, and we were willing to fight to preserve that possibility. The young lieutenant paused, her expression growing more intense. The Caliph Dominion represented a threat not just to human civilization, but to the very concept of peaceful coexistence among spacefaring species. Your empire's expansion pattern suggested that eventually every independent civilization would face the choice between subjugation and extinction. And humans decided to provide a third option. We decided to demonstrate that aggressive expansion carries unacceptable risks, that species which threaten others must be prepared to face overwhelming retaliation, that the age of conquest through superior firepower is over. Kethvar considered her words as the sound of approaching transport engines echoed through the ruined academy. In a few minutes, he would board a human vessel that would carry him to one of the Caliph resettlement worlds, where the remnants of his people would begin the long process of building a new civilization under human oversight. Lieutenant, what will happen to us now? to the Caliph people? Sir, that depends largely on choices your people make in the coming years. The Human Colonial Alliance has no interest in ruling over other species or extracting tribute from conquered populations. Our goal is to ensure that the Caliph never again pose a threat to peaceful civilizations. Lieutenant Kim gestured toward another display, this one showing construction projects throughout former Caliph space. Cities being rebuilt, agricultural systems being restored, and educational facilities being established. We're offering your people the opportunity to rebuild your civilization along different principles. Peaceful development instead of aggressive expansion. Scientific advancement instead of military conquest. Cultural growth instead of subjugation of others. And if we refuse these opportunities, the young lieutenant's expression remained calm, but Kethvar detected something harder beneath her professional demeanor. Sir, the Human Colonial Alliance will continue to monitor Caliph development for as long as necessary to ensure compliance with the terms of surrender. Any attempt to rebuild military capabilities beyond those required for internal security will result in immediate intervention. You're saying we will never again be permitted to threaten other species. That's correct, sir. The Caliph Dominion's military expansion is permanently ended. Your people's future lies in peaceful development under Alliance oversight. The transport engines grew louder as the human vessel approached the landing platform. Through the shattered walls of the academy, Kethvar could see other Caliph personnel preparing for evacuation. Former officers, instructors, and support staff who were struggling to adapt to a reality where their entire military tradition had been rendered obsolete in the space of a few months. Lieutenant Kim, may I ask one final question? Of course, sir. Was this outcome always inevitable? From a moment humans became aware of Caliph expansion, was war always the only possible conclusion? The young officer considered the question with the same careful thoughtfulness that seemed to characterize human responses to complex issues. Sir, I believe that conflict was inevitable once the Caliph Dominion decided that other species existed to serve their interests. But the specific outcome of this war was determined by human preparation and Caliph overconfidence. Lieutenant Kim gestured toward the approaching transport. Your leadership assumed that humans would respond to aggression the same way that other species had responded, with fear, desperation, and ultimately submission to superior force. But humans responded differently. We responded by becoming better at warfare than the Caliph Dominion ever imagined possible. We studied your methods, developed countermeasures for your technologies, and prepared strategies specifically designed to neutralize your advantages. The lieutenant paused as the transport settled onto the landing platform, its engines winding down to a low hum. But most importantly, sir, we approached this conflict with the understanding that war is not a game or a demonstration of superiority. It's a tool for achieving specific political objectives. Our objective was to permanently end the threat of Caliph aggression while preserving as many lives as possible on both sides. And you achieved that objective. Yes, sir. The Caliph Dominion no longer exists as a political entity capable of threatening other species. Your people are alive and being offered the opportunity to build a better civilization. The immediate threat to human colonies has been eliminated. Lieutenant Kim extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting and farewell that had become familiar to Kethvar during the months of occupation and transition. Sir, I hope that in time, your people will come to understand that this outcome represents not the destruction of Caliph civilization, but its transformation into something that can coexist peacefully with other species. Kethvar accepted the handshake, marveling at the strange human custom of physical contact as a symbol of respect and goodwill. Lieutenant, I believe that understanding will take generations to develop fully, but perhaps that is appropriate for a transformation of this magnitude. Yes, sir. Change on this scale requires time, patience, and the willingness to accept that the old ways may not have been the best ways. As Kethvar boarded the transport that would carry him to his new life, he reflected on the events that had brought his civilization to this point. The Caliph Dominion had built an empire based on the assumption that military superiority guaranteed permanent dominance. They had conquered dozens of species, controlled hundreds of star systems, and planned expansions that would have encompassed half the galaxy. But they had made one critical error in judgment. They had assumed that because humans appeared peaceful, they were weak. Because human colonies looked defenseless, they couldn't fight back. Because humans hadn't attacked anyone, they didn't understand warfare. The truth, as Kefvar now understood, was that humans understood warfare better than any species the galaxy had ever produced. They had simply been patient enough to let their enemies believe otherwise until the moment came to reveal their true capabilities. As the transport lifted off from the ruins of the greatest military academy in Caliph space, former Admiral Kefvar looked down at the shattered structures below and thought about the lesson his species had learned too late. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy wasn't the one with the sharpest claws or the largest ships. It was the one that smiled back while planning your complete defeat. The Reaper had removed his mask, and beneath it lay the face of a species that treated warfare not as conquest, but as problem-solving. A species that approached violence with the same methodical precision they applied to engineering challenges or scientific research. The age of the Caliph Dominion was over. The age of human oversight had begun. And across the galaxy, other aggressive species were beginning to receive reports about what happened to civilizations that threatened humanity's children among the stars.